Hello and welcome back to yet another insightful discussion for the Zalora Trender Southeast Asia Report 2021. By now, it's easy to see how significant the pandemic had impacted on digital acceleration, let alone within Southeast Asia itself. In fact, almost 80% of the region's consumers are set to go digital by the end of 2021. With all that being said, however, it's important to note that consumers vary from country to country, especially here in a region of various religions and languages. And perhaps no one understands this more than Simone Cortini, Marketplace and Platform Services Director at Zalora Group. So please welcome him along into discussion as we deep dive into the ever-evolving complexities of Southeast Asia's consumer behavior. Thanks for joining us, Simone.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's really no surprise that digital retail in Southeast Asia is on track to see almost 80% of the region's consumers going digital by the end of 2021. And this is really because of the pandemic forcing the digital penetration. Where do you see the opportunities for fashion and retail brands to seize Southeast Asia's e-commerce momentum?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I think it's a great question. It really depends. Overall, I believe that we are living in a very particular moment right now with this pandemic. But there are two things that I believe are very important. One is the fundamentals, right? If we look at Southeast Asia, it's a region where the e-commerce penetration is still relatively low when compared to other regions of the world. If you think about the US, Europe, but also China, which is one of the highest, I think there is some catch up to do. So there is a fundamental reason why Southeast Asia opportunity is huge for retailers. And if you look specifically at this historical moment that we're living now with the pandemic, everything moved so fast, right? With this acceleration of consumers going online, so many for the first time. And I think for retailers, the biggest opportunity is not being left behind. So basically making sure that they have the right infrastructure, they have the right setup to do e-commerce successfully. And this region is very challenging from many points of view, specifically logistics. It's very difficult and complicated operationally to get products and parcels around. If you think about Philippines and Indonesia with the many islands, but also from a regulation standpoint, import and customs are all different. So it's a very difficult region to tackle. So the opportunity there is making sure that they have an understanding of how to ride this wave, which is accelerating. And that's why in Zalora we actually we are doubling down on this. Want to help brands basically being successful doing e-commerce, not just on Zalora itself, but also in the other channels, whether it can be their own brand.com and website, but also other marketplaces. We want to build that type of service business to help them succeed.
Yeah, I think in this sense that diversifying is really like the key word here. And going back to that whole sentiment, I think consumers are also really going into buying essentials, and looking for best value deals. Do you think this has somewhat created new shopping habits or trends? And if so, do you see some examples?
For sure. I think it's two things, right? You have the consumers being stuck at home. So because of the lockdowns and all these things, so they don't have much choice when it comes to shopping and they have to go online. And so we see all these new categories that previously were more offline focused now moving towards online. So if you see the experience, for example, in Zalora, right after the March first lockdowns and the beginning of the pandemic, we've been very reactive in launching new segments and new categories, starting with as you mentioned, the essential category, which at the beginning was very masks and hand sanitizers focused, but then we expanded even to, food and many other things with the launch of Zmart. And these are, I think, trends that they're very specific because of the pandemic. But then if we look at overall the bigger picture and what our business is in terms of fashion, we also see radically changing trends. Some are temporary, and some are more, I believe, they're going to stay a bit longer and probably permanent. As an example, we've seen in the first months of the pandemic, our traditional business of fashion, so dresses or occasional wear, losing a little bit in terms of sales mix. And then we saw the rise of this, essential beauty, skincare, comfy wear and sportswear is doing very well. So we have this, sudden shift in demand. And also on our side, we've been quite fast in adapting to that shift and launching categories accordingly to the changing consumer needs. But I do believe some of them will stay, like the rise of, the more comfy wear and the basics, because I believe the work from home, for example, is a trend that is here to stay for many companies. So overall, that type of category, but also the home and living category, which is a recent addition to our portfolio, will perform very well even after the pandemic.
Yeah, and so speaking of actually, I came across a report by Trade Economics, and especially in Singapore, I saw that jewelry and timepieces have been a product category that a lot of people have been investing in, even more so than footwear actually. Just wondering, what your thoughts are on this, sudden surge of investments and appreciation for high value items.
Yeah, that's a little bit counterintuitive if you think about it, but we've seen a very strong rise in the luxury and, as you said, more high price point, higher value goods. And I think there is a mix of reasons to that. One for sure is that its Zalora positioning is really good for higher end products. So, and if you ask our consumers, they see us as a very trusted branded platform. So if you look at other marketplaces, for example, they're more, I would say, less curated. So they allow many brands to list products and sometimes also even consumer to consumer type of transactions. Whereas in Zalora, we focus on allowing brands to sell to consumers, and we work with those authorized distributors. And that created this image on the consumer side that we are the trusted platform. So whenever you launch something that is a little bit higher price point and branded, usually it works quite well in Zalora. And that's why I believe we see this trend of strong growth because those are items that we historically didn't carry. So because we started as a pure fashion retailer, mostly fast fashion and lower price point, but then we slowly evolved into a more branded platform, and that's why we see this success with the luxury category. And on the other side, I also see the consumers that are becoming more interested also in quality with the also rise of sustainability and many other topics. We see this shift of buying more high quality products that they last longer rather than those fast fashion that you keep buying on a. So the frequency is also different of these purchases. But it's a very interesting trend and a trend that we are riding, and we are very well positioned to really create a strong business out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is not part of the questions in the list here, but what you mentioned just now just kind of reminded me of how I guess the shift in equality is kind of the gap is closing a little bit more. It's a rise of a middle class kind of situation here where you see, I guess, in communities in Malaysia and Indonesia, where everyone's getting a little bit more sophisticated in their choices. Do you think this is somewhat kind of a result of this new growing middle class?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly the second side of it, where there is a consumer demand that is shifting as well. Consumers are getting more conscious, but also they're seeing their purchasing power increasing because these are countries with strong demographics and young consumers that are getting access to higher income every year. So I think we will see. I mean, this is a trend that is macroeconomically also positive to favor higher quality goods over time.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess also with regards to being a lot more educated, they're also getting a little bit more demanding. Everyone wants, something now. And how does that affect how, businesses approach fulfillment, especially from the Zalora standpoint?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I think on the fulfillment side is especially if you look at Southeast Asia, right? It's so we know that fulfillment is the most important, if not the most important thing in e-commerce, right? As you said, the consumers' expectations are always rising, and it's a big part of the shopping experience is actually how fast and how reliably and how seamless that experience is. And in Zalora, we always made this our first priority, even before those more engage in topics like, marketing. Or we've always been a very operation driven company from the very beginning. And that's why we built one of the best, I would say probably the best infrastructure when it comes to fashion e-commerce in our region. And if I think about brands, they usually tackle this topic in two ways, right? They try, so especially brands that they enter in Southeast Asia, they either try to do their own thing, so they're building their own warehouses and their own infrastructure from scratch. And there are some other brands that they try to find a partner locally, which empowers them and enables them by offering already solutions for this specifically this problem, right? And with my experience, what I've seen with brands is that the solution number one, so trying to do it yourself, it's very, very challenging. And I've seen many brands failing and only a few being able to really build with a lot of effort and investment to really build something sustainable. And I've seen many brands succeeding by finding a local partner, strong services, fulfillment services partner. And that's why in Zalora, we actually are moving our business of services towards helping the brands figuring this out. We actually have solutions for them to, park their stock with Zalora, and Zalora being actually the enabler for them, where we just not, focus on the Zalora sales and the Zalora fulfillment, but we would also provide this seamless experience and fast delivery experience for their own brand.com or for the other channels. So it's and then the brand, when a brand is able to achieve this, so find the good partner to say, hey, you're gonna take care of all the headaches because I know you've been doing it for many years. I'm gonna focus on my branding, communicating with consumers, and then that's why they succeed, right? Because they remove those headaches and the big investments needed to build their own warehouses, and that's how they are able to focus more on the consumer and making sure that, because also that side is very important, right? But then by offering this, we are able to take away big problem for them. It becomes also a competitive advantage if you find the right partner. And in the case of fashion, I think Zalora is probably the best position enabler in this region because we've been doing fashion for almost a decade now, and we built a very strong infrastructure just for that.
I guess this is where, marketplace comes in, Zalora Marketplace comes in. Now, given your bird's eye view, as head of marketplace, how did the pandemic affect the growth of marketplaces here in Southeast Asia? And did it make it easier for your team to attract new brands into Zalora?
Yes, I think it's a supply demand consideration, right? So we've seen the demand going up, right? All these consumers coming online and this organic growth arriving on our websites and apps. And the consequence is also the brands now, they want to tap into that demand. And many brands, they found themselves after the lockdowns with their, traditional distribution channel being closed for extended period of time. So they had a lot of stock that was not moving, and the natural choice is finding a way to list it somewhere. And for fashion and lifestyle premium brands, the first choice is of course Zalora, because we are positioned with a clear, branding and clear customer base, and that's why we saw this inflow of brands knocking at our doors. Hey, how can we list? We really want to work with you guys. So it's a natural, I think, consequence of what was happening and how we were positioned. And some brands, they were able to benefit more because they're being able to launch in the marketplace before the pandemic, so they actually caught the full, trend and the full explosion of online. Some others, they were arrived a little bit late, but still with the marketplace model, it's very, very easy and fast to launch on Zalora. It's just really a few clicks and a few visions and product creation, and then you can be live in a matter of weeks. And that's why it's the best choice for brands, especially brands that they don't have also a warehousing and the e-commerce fulfillment solution. That's where we also, with our marketplace services, we help them to get their stuff live fast and their warehousing sorted out with our, for example, Fulfilled by Zalora solution, where we actually take care of the full end-to-end fulfillment. So it's just a matter of agreeing the partnership, and then we actually do everything for them, and we help them clear that stock that is not moving due to the constraint in their physical stores.
Yeah, I guess in some way this is also considered, omnichannel. It's like the key word over the past few years, and I guess it's being further accelerated by the pandemic and everyone's, I guess, B2B. You kind of have to level out the playing field here. You have to kind of be present in the physical world, but also digitally. Now, with that in mind, how has Zalora helped brands develop this strategy, particularly when it comes to their digital transformation?
Yeah. So the way I see it is, it was a journey for us. So it started with, you know, creating our own business in Southeast Asia. So launching our own online retail model, and then building our own warehousing capabilities, logistic infrastructure, learning in the different regions how to do e-commerce, which is a very different, process and strategies that you need to consider. So there was those, like, almost a decade of learning and experience on how to do online in Southeast Asia. And now we are in a phase where we're shifting towards, of course, always being, the consumer fashion platform, but also how can we use all this knowledge that we have internally, all this data, all these even, processes, SOPs, warehousing, and agreements with the 3PLs. It's a very valuable, set of capabilities that we have. How can we, share it with the brands that are going through the same things that we did 10 years ago, right? But and then we can provide this knowledge to them, and that's why we created the platform services department, which is basically, it's divided in three big areas. One is operations by Zalora. So we created this area of focus to exactly help brands to really tackle the operational and logistical problems in Southeast Asia, but also everything that is supply chain, everything that is about operations. We can help the brands, even from the product shooting. We have our Zalora production services. Everything can be used by the brands and on their own websites or other channels. And then we have the marketing by Zalora, which is one of our most successful areas. And here, we have tons of data, we have tons of strategies and processes in place. And it's about how can we really help, almost like a marketing agency would do, to elevate the branding and the performance as well of the brands on Zalora, but also in general in Southeast Asia. And so we provide, consulting, and we provide, you know, channels for them to promote their brand and to talk to consumers. And then the last area, which is also very successful and the most recently launched, is the Trender set of products, which is focused on, it's called the Data by Zalora area, which is focused mostly on sharing insights with our brands. And they come in two forms, right? There is a possibility for brands to access reports, so our Trender Basic, which is the most more subscription, monthly subscription with the low priced, more category insights specific to the brands, the category that they're selling in. But then there is also our Trender Professional product. That is a very structured solution for brands to really create customized point of access in our database, so they can really see from if they have an opportunity that they see, they can really use the Zalora data to shape their strategy in a way that they couldn't, because usually these brands, they don't have much access to data, because if you think about brand.coms, they're much lower in traffic usually than a big marketplace, and or if most traditional brands, they are reliant to also offline distributors, so they don't know much about their consumers, so they're actually willing to pay to get access to this data that would in the end save them a lot of money in the future, because they can they have an advantage towards their competitors.
Yeah, I guess you can say that information is king here. And with that in mind, Trender being the data provider, one of the things that we've uncovered was that last year, going back into product categories, skincare and wellness were actually one of the hot items during the pandemic. Were you surprised about this growth, and how did makeup brands, perform compared to skincare brands? Especially now, we're kind of like is somewhere in an endemic, not exactly a pandemic, but an endemic stage.
Yeah, to be honest, I was not that surprised to see skincare, gaining traction overall. So in Zalora, we are seeing a trend of beauty growing really strongly against all the other categories. So every month, beauty is gaining a bit of share because it's growing much faster than all the other categories. And I think it's something that for us was a mix of two probably main reasons. One is on the Zolora side, we have been quite proactive in promoting beauty even before the pandemic, slightly before the pandemic. We had already a set of big beauty brands that we are working with, and I also do see beauty as a very complementary, category to fashion. So we were very well positioned to do well in beauty. But then, of course, with the pandemic and the starting of the pandemic, with beauty being a category that is also shopped quite heavily offline, then there is a share of traffic that moved, and some of these products like skincare are very regular purchases from brands and sorry, from consumers, and then they will have to get access to those online. So that's why you see a spike in skincare, which is more of a very stay at home friendly kind of product compared to, for example, makeup, which is still a beauty subcategory, which had a downtrend after the pandemic, of course, because there is no more much makeup needed when you stay at home compared to when you're going out, right? So we have seen that drastic change, but then skincare keeps being like a very strong and relevant category in driving beauty up, but also other subcategories are catching up now. So makeup is coming back because if you see like across the boards, across markets, we see like a bit of the lockdown easing up. So at the same time, we see the growth in the makeup and some occasion wear coming back. But overall, what really changed the game in beauty was also how Zalora repivot the business after the pandemic hit. So we saw these trends again using data. You can really predict um, how the composition of your sales are going to be, and that's when we knew it's time to double down on beauty, and then we launched actually a specific beauty segment, and we started investing a little bit more in the category, and now is becoming is the fastest growing category for us, and something that we see getting extreme traction and important in terms of strategic focus for us to become also a beauty platform in the eye of consumers that for now they still see us as mainly a fashion uh, platform. The idea is that we would like to for them to really understand that we are more of a fashion and beauty and lifestyle platform, which is happening because you see it on the consumer acquisition side and the purchase frequency also of customers that they move to beauty, then they stick to it, they keep buying it, and they come back and buy beauty again on Zalora. So I think we are positioned to really build this category to being a primary core category of our business.
Yeah, going back to what you said just now about, when customer or consumers are coming out of lockdown, do you see that there's a correlation, that it's the definite correlation between going in and out of lockdown and the purchasing behavior, especially with regard to specific product categories?
Yeah, for sure. We've seen many of these correlations. It's actually quite predictable, and you see really getting steam and growing as lockdown starts to ease, even in a gradual way, right? If you take the example of Malaysia, that had quite a series of long lockdown, but then slowly started to ease a little bit the traveling and ease a little bit some of the restrictions, and then slowly you'd see the travel category starting to do better, like travel bags and swimwear. So it's you can really see this purchasing behavior really, like a correlation between the regulation and how the pandemic is constraints are lifted, and then the growth and performance of specific subcategories. And this is something, if you look at our fashion business, is very evident, and especially if you take the longer time frame, when you see pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and now that we are, as you said, more on a, I hope, exiting situation of the pandemic, you can see how the categories are moving, and that's why trender is very relevant for brands, right? Because if they're able to see these trends in advance and see and with trender you can really do that, and also do it for your own customers, how they're changing their behaviors, and you can really react to it in whether it is trading actions, like in terms of campaigns and discounts and pricing actions, but also with mid-term and longer term decision on when you see these bigger trends on your supply chain and buying budgets.
Yeah, and especially given your position, you can see how the categories have been shifted with all this data that is on hand. Now, in terms of categories and sales of products, offered in the platform, which has been the most, which category has seen the most sustained, since the beginning of the pandemic? Do you think there'll be like a permanent shift for the next 3 to 5 years, or do you see some of the impacted categories coming back?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my personal belief is that we will go back to a very similar sales mix that we had before, especially if you look at our business in terms of pillars. So without counting beauty and the new categories, if you look at the fashion specifically, we will see, for example, the occasion wear and dresses and heels coming back at the level they were before, once the pandemic is fully over, and more the traditional way of socializing, we'll go back to those type of settings, and I think those categories will start do well again. So I do believe we're going to see that come back, but still we will be seeing, in terms of Zalora, those new categories that we launched and during the pandemic, and they rise so fast, they will also stay there in terms of and they will gain more contribution of share of the total Zalora business. So if we think about our home and living category, which was launched during the pandemic, it was a result of the first essential, and then moved towards the more lifestyle assortment, and now is very much a home and living category. There we've seen like categories like bed sheets and bedwear, but also kitchen accessories doing extremely well. But I think those trends are also here to stay. So we have positioned ourselves now as a more of a, I wouldn't say horizontal retailer, but branded platform for fashion and lifestyle brands, and these categories are probably going to gain increasing percentage of share of the business over time. Both home and living, beauty, and also our luxury kids. These are all segments that we have increased in terms of visibility on the website, assortment, and created structured pages for customers to browse this segment of the assortment in a different way. And these are more trends that I think there will be staying. And if you think about fashion, that part of the category mix, I still believe that sports and comfy wear will maintain a bit higher percentage than what was in the past, because I think we changed a little bit the way we work, and many companies adopt now remote working, hybrid. So there is more of staying at home during the day as well. So I think that would impact also after the pandemic to shop, for consumer to shop more, that comfy and basic wear will stay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another point to sort of highlight as well is that different countries tend to have very specific uh, profiles. This is what I've come to realize as well. And during my reading, I realized that in the Philippines they tend to, or they're more likely to be interested in things a little bit more sustainable. In Malaysia, you get people generally a bit more interested in branded goods. Indonesia are definitely into sportswear. They're into kind of self help and all of that. Do you see this happen on Zalora?
Yes, it's actually for me, is one of the key selling points of Trender as well, because Southeast Asia is for many companies, especially that when they're the first time that they try to enter in Southeast Asia, they see this as Southeast Asia. We need to launch in Southeast Asia. But the reality of things is that these are very, very different markets. You have different cultures, you have different languages, you have different, level of income. You have different cultural, not just the culture itself, but also trends in terms of if you think about fashion, and but also other, as you said, branded versus more non-branded. So they're very, very different, and that's how companies can really use Trender to access these trends and insight at the country level. And then they can shape their strategy in terms of pricing and trading campaigns, but also, supply chain decisions based on exactly these trends. So as you said, there are similarities across countries and differences. So there are countries that are more, for example, price sensitive, and they're more, driven by campaigns and promotions. There are some other markets like Singapore is very, I call it like fashion driven. So the consumers are more interested into getting the latest, trendy item from a specific brand rather than get the best bargain possible. So these are things that you realize only if you look at the data, because at the end of the day, they're very different consumers. Even if geographically they're close to each other, we see that the behavior is totally different.
Yeah, and also in Indonesia and Malaysia, one of the largest Muslim consumers. I assume Indonesia will be the largest. So that also comes in or brings in a completely new set of consumers from a Muslim standpoint. That's modest wear is a huge deal right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're actually one of our largest share of business, especially during the festivity. Like if you think about the Raya seasonality, we see these categories uh, getting so much traction in terms of sales, and becoming like a very dominant topic and growth driver for many brands, not just the brands that they traditionally sell in those categories. That's the thing that usually many brands they don't understand, and is an opportunity. Is that Raya is just not about Muslim wear. Is about is an opportunity for all the brands to participate and sell more during this. Of course, there is more traction towards those type of modest wear, but it's still a very strong seasonality typical to this region of the world, and specifically Indonesia, as you said, and Malaysia, but also other markets like Singapore. There is still you can also see that traction during Raya, because there is still part of the population that is Muslim, and it happens across the board. But of course, Indonesia and Malaysia are actually the biggest two, and there are actually two countries where we have a lot of cross assortment for Muslim wear specifically. But our assortment, we tend to list it also in all the other markets. So we actually have quite relevant share of Muslim wear in other markets out of Malaysia and Indonesia.
That's interesting to know. Now, going back to trends, what are the trends in e-commerce and retail are you most excited to see next year?
Yeah, I think uh, for me, personally, I'm very excited on the platform side of things. So the platform business that we're trying to build as Zalora, I think is going to get more relevance in the year to come, and with many innovations coming on our side, especially on the operation by Zalora side. And we are seeing many brands really liking this service and jumping on this service. For example, the one stock solution product that we have, where brands can just give us the stock, and we become the partner for them for the region to really do all the fulfillment, and they can just focus on their branding and their trading in the different platforms. This is one of the trends that I think is gonna get a lot of traction, but also with the complementarity of all the other services that we provide, such as marketing and data. So this is overall the trend that I'm very excited about. And the other trend that I see in Zalora, we are also investing a lot, is the sustainability trend. So if you look at our consumers, we realized, looking at data and surveys, that they're starting to be strongly interested in sustainability, and it's something that we've seen in Europe and US. It's a quite a big topic for consumers. In Southeast Asia, we are seeing like really rising right now, and in Zalora, we want to take a primary spot, being the leading fashion and lifestyle destination. We want to make sure that we have the right assortment and the right assortment visibility for this trend. So we launched some innovation recently, like the Orta Edit, which is a filter for consumers to to just see the products that they basically comply with our stringent criteria of sustainability. But more and more in the future, there is a lot of innovation happening in the States and Europe, where there is the circular fashion, the possibility for reselling your clothes. All these trends, I think, they will become more and more relevant, and for consumers, they're also much more sustainable from economic standpoint, and also very interesting for us to enable. And if you think about circular fashion, we already have quite a substantial pre-love section of our website, where you can shop already. It's not Zalora assortment; it's in partnership with brands, so it's a marketplace model. But we already create a really nice pre-loved, more of a higher price point luxury items. But I think in the future this can be expanded to a bigger chunk of the price spectrum and brand spectrum. So that's a trend that I'm very interested about. And the last one is, I think, social media and social commerce is something that will also become more and more relevant. We've seen it in China with the live streaming, and in Zalora, we think that there's going to be something similar happening in Southeast Asia. That's why we also doubled down with our recent Z Live innovation that we launched, which is the possibility for brands to share, live shows and live updates, tutorial with their consumers. And ideally, this would become also a social media kind of play, where there is all this collaboration between KOLs, brands, and Zalora in the middle. I think it will become more relevant in the future, and also an area for brands to invest more.
Yeah, big things coming in for next year, I guess. Now, just to wrap things up, why should brands work with online retailers and marketplaces like Zalora?
Yes, I think it's very difficult to find a why not reason. But if I think about the main reason why marketplaces are relevant, and specifically Zalora, I think marketplaces is relevant because I do see the trend, talking to many brands, and also if you see like the official earning calls of the bigger fashion brands and the sports brands, they all want to increase their online presence, right? They've been heavily investing in offline, and under investing in online for a long time, and now they're starting to raise their targets on how much sales they want from online and direct to consumer. And the marketplace is actually the channel that allows you to do that, to sell direct to consumers for brands. So it's like the same comparison of a physical mall in the physical world, the marketplace is a digital mall where brands will open all their stores around different regions. So now the question becomes, why is Zalora the best online mall for a brand to open? And I think we are not the best for everything. What we are think we are really strong in many areas, but what we are think are the best for brands is the positioning and experience that we provide. So we have a very stringent curation of our catalog. So we don't want to have 10 million products when you type a specific dress. We want to have a selection of the best, international mix of international, local, regional brands, and that's why it's already curated and pre-selected by Zalora. So it's a different type of experience. And the second part is more of the enablement, where we want brands to, being able to directly interact with their consumers. So we create this platform for them to, tap into and then be able to tell stories about their brand. So we don't want to be like just a race to the bottom for the lowest price. We want the brands to be able to, share their content, and that's why we create all this, marketing by Zalora or data by Zalora, where brands can really, use all our set of tools to then communicate their brand effectively in a more of the selected uh, consumer base, which is not maybe the high traffic of a general merchandise, but it's a very high quality traffic because it's a relevant traffic that is coming to buy branded goods from the brands directly rather than everything from everyone.
Amazing. Good stuff, Simone. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have to convince me to be a shopper in Zolora. I'm already one of those hundreds of thousands others who are already doing that. But yeah, I hope everyone's who watches this and is listening into this will find this very beneficial, especially when it comes to navigating the complexities here in this region. As always, stay tuned to clue into more insider discussions with Zalora this Trender 2021 Southeast Asia report. Thank you.